Well, you all know, or at least can safely assume, that I am a priest. I don't just happen to have the outfit and I didn't sneak in somehow. Many of you, but maybe not all of you, know that I am also an attorney. I usually have to clarify that I am still a currently practicing attorney while I also engage in my priestly vocation. So this morning I preached and I presided at Eucharist. I'm preaching here tonight, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to log into my computer and I think I have a settlement agreement to write. I hope that knowing that I am an attorney and a priest gives you just an inkling of why Richard might have asked me to preach this evening for the Feast of Thurgood Marshall. Okay, so what do these three things have in common? The northern kingdom of Israel, in which Amos preached in the 8th century BCE, the America of Thurgood Marshall, particularly during the Civil Rights Movement, and our America of today, 2026. I'm sure you can find plenty of things that they have in common, but what's on my mind, I'm sad to say, is injustice, rampant injustice. Through Amos, God rails against the people who are how the people are treating each other. They don't listen to truth, they run roughshod over the poor, impose unjust taxes, afflict the righteous, take bribes, and forsake the needy. Thurgood Marshall also lived in a time of great injustice, built on a long history of bondage and oppression. The transatlantic slave trade began 500 years ago this year. The enslavement of human beings because of the color of their skin is deeply woven into the DNA of this country. Even after technical liberation from enslavement, Jim Crow served as another run at slavery by a different name. Even today, after the supposed end of Jim Crow, slavery still finds some form or other. This oppression is what Justice Marshall argued against prophetically as an attorney and ruled against as a Supreme Court justice. Indeed, May 17th is neither the day Justice Marshall was born nor the day he died. This was chosen as his feast day because on May 17th, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down the decision in the case Marshall is most well known for arguing. That decision, in Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, held that separate is inherently unequal and unjust. And we have today. Immigrants and others are treated with cruelty and criminalized. Queer people, especially our trans and non-binary siblings, are subject to cruelty, attempts to strip away their dignity, and attempts to erase them. Women continue to have to fight for equal rights and are viewed by all too many as little more than incubators. Unjust and unjustified wars. The poor are oppressed and denied health care and livable wages. Justice Marshall's successors on the Supreme Court undermine voting rights and the rule of law and give one person far more power than our founders ever intended. Whether it's 8th century BCE Israel, mid-20th century CE America, or 2026 America, injustice has been and remains very present in our midst. It's discouraging. It's easy to lose hope. I mean, after all, I just told you about oppression over almost 3 centuries, and I'm sorry to tell you the history is even longer than that. Amos and Justice Marshall, though, still managed to find hope. Maybe they have some strength and wisdom for us as we grapple with responding to injustice in our time. Let's have a peek at Furman versus Georgia. For the lawyers out there, that's 408 U.S. 238, 1971. The central question in that case was whether the death penalty was unconstitutionally cruel and unusual in violation of the Eighth Amendment. The Supreme Court held that the death penalty at least with the inconsistency with which it was applied, was in fact unconstitutional. Justice Marshall wrote a concurring opinion, meaning that he agreed with the court's ruling, but he had some other things he wanted to say. In that opinion, Justice Marshall argued that at that stage in American history, 1971, there is no role for the death penalty. Justice Marshall argued that because any person in 1971 who knew all the facts would deem the death penalty cruel, the death penalty violated the Eighth Amendment and therefore is unconstitutional in any form. At the time of this decision, things were not great in our country. Crime was quite high in just about every city, and still, Justice Marshall reasoned that the death penalty didn't belong in our justice system. He wrote this in the conclusion of his opinion. At a time in our history when the streets of the nation's cities inspire fear and despair rather than pride and hope, it is difficult to maintain objectivity and concern for our fellow citizens. But the measure of a country's greatness is its ability to retain compassion in time of crisis. No nation in the recorded history of man has a greater tradition of revering justice and fair treatment for all its citizens in times of turmoil, confusion, and tension than us. This is a country which stands tallest in troubled times, a country that clings to fundamental principles, cherishes its constitutional heritage, and rejects simple solutions that compromise the values that lie at the roots of our democratic system. In striking down capital punishment, this court does not malign our system of government. On the contrary, it pays homage to it. Only in a free society could right triumph in difficult times, and could civilization record its magnificent advancement. In recognizing the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute. We achieve a major milestone in the long road up from barbarism and join the approximately 70 other jurisdictions in the world which celebrate their regard for civilization and humanity by shunning capital punishment. Justice Marshall found hope despite the fear and despair of that time, precisely because of the principles underlying American government. He contends that it is there, clinging to fundamental principles, cherishing America's constitutional heritage, and rejecting simple solutions that compromise democratic values. It is there that we find hope to do difficult things in trying times. To boot, he even sounds like an Episcopalian, as he was, in recognizing the humanity of our fellow human beings. We pay ourselves the highest tribute. That reminds me of a question we sometimes ask. Will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being? I also can't help but hear Amos echo through Justice Marshall's words. Amos calls on the people to reject the injustice perpetrated in their midst, to seek and love good, to establish justice. If they do that, Amos prophesies, they will have life. God will be with them, and they will experience God's grace. The thing is, the very act of calling the people to turn from injustice is an act of hope. Hope that someone will listen. Hope comes from the fundamental principles of divine love, justice, and mercy at the roots of our faith. Hope comes from the fact that God is always creating, always restoring, always resurrecting. Hope comes from the fact that we can choose, and many times have chosen, a different path, the path that draws us closer to God and each other. As a lawyer, I find hope in Justice Marshall's reminder of the values that lie at the roots of our democratic system. As a person of faith, I find hope in the life and love that lies at the roots of our faith. Both call us to seek and love good, establish justice, and care for one another as members of one community and one body. Amen.